In today's episode, bought the wrong software and don't want to admit you made a mistake. Cool, pay 5x as much and lose your job. Trim the hedges. Can't leave before the end of my notice period? No problem. So let's get started. Bought the wrong software and don't want to admit you made a mistake. Cool, pay 5x as much and lose your job. Reading these delicious stories reminded me of my own MC story that happened over 20 years ago. Conversations from memory may have minor details altered, but the story's the same. I had worked about 2 years at this point for a MSP, at the time called a systems integrator, and they generously paid for the engineers/techs to obtain industry certifications. I started out as an on-call contractor setting up desktops, and they hired me on full-time after about 3 months. By the time the MC occurred, I had worked my way up to junior level engineer, obtained my MCSE, CNA, and was working towards my CNE and Cisco certs. At the time, Novell and Microsoft were neck and neck in server operating system dominance, hence getting both certs. With book study and field experience, I wasn't an expert, but I held my own. One day I get called into the boss office to meet with him, the owner, and the salesperson. The owner told me with a gleam in his eye that the company just landed a major, high-profile client, our city's pro basketball team, and they've agreed to give us a small task to prove ourselves. I was to install and configure backup software on their Windows server, important later, and test to ensure it works. The team offered the carrot of not only signing a long-term support contract, but also a recommendation to their business partners and other teams if I was successful. This was definitely within my wheelhouse. I figured 1 hour tops, in and out. I showed up to the arena, checked in with security, and I'm escorted to the business office area. A lady we'll call Karen comes out and introduces herself as the CIO. Karen spent the first 45 minutes of my time there to take me on a grand tour of the business office. I saw the owner's offices, the GM's office, her office, pictures of framed, autographed jerseys, the nearly empty trophy case, and the big glass window that overlooks the court. She even said I'm welcome to eat lunch in the staff dining area. She then said she's taking me to the server room. In another circumstance, I would have considered the tour a treat, but 3 things. First, I had another client to see that day, and this was messing up my schedule. Not a big deal, I can have the office call the client to move the visit back a little. Second, the team hadn't exactly been playing championship caliber basketball except the last 2 years prior. Before that, they made the playoffs twice in 15 years and got their heads kicked in both times. Third, my favorite basketball team is this team's rival, so it's cool, but I'm not over the moon. Then she asked if I was ready to see the server room. We turn a couple of corners, and she unlocked the door to a really small office. Boxes stacked in one corner, spare furniture in another. At the back wall sat an old-school CRT monitor hooked to an old-school KVM switch box on a desk connected to 2 tower computers sitting side by side on the carpeted floor. Right next to the monitor sat a stack of network switches with a spaghetti of cables that ran haphazardly up the wall and into a removed panel of the fake ceiling. On top of the towers sat a box with the backup software. Karen waved her hand at the setup, pointed to a sheet with some handwriting on it, said I should have everything I need, and she'll be in her office if I had any questions. She left me to it, and after I called the home office to reschedule my other client, I started assessing the situation. I quickly saw the first problem. The NetWare server was already set up to run backups, but going by the status report date on the screen, backups hadn't been running for months. The software was only an add-on module to backup email folders. Using the credentials on the sheet, I logged into the Windows Server running Exchange to handle all the email. I tried to look at different settings, and I quickly realized I only had limited permissions. I logged to the Novell server, and I didn't have enough permissions. I walked back to the CIO's office. So far, Karen's been pretty chill, but suddenly Karen flipped the Karen switch on. Maybe I didn't seem impressed enough with the tour. Me, 2 problems. First, I need admin permissions to do the work you need done. Second, Karen, why do you need admin permissions? Me, 2. Install and configure the backup software? The software also. Karen, why can't you just use the accounts I gave you? Me, because they don't have enough permissions? Also the backup soft. Karen, my other tech, let's call him Paul, uses those accounts fine to run the backups. Why do you need extra permissions? Picks up the desk phone and dials, "Hey Paul, could you come to my office now please?" Thanks. Me, probably because he has backup operator permissions. Higher permissions are needed to install software. Speaking of which, Karen, after Paul knocks on the door and enters. Have you had any problems with the daily backups? Paul, no. Why? Karen, Federal Ant 9 here says he needs extra permissions to install the backup software. Do you agree? Paul, look side to side, I'm not sure as I just handle the desktop. Karen, if Paul can manage backups with those accounts, I don't see why you can't install the software, Federal Ant 9. Me, how did you install the software originally? Karen, all of this was set up before I started here, and I was brought in to clean all of this up. Me, is there anyone else who manages the servers? Karen, no, it's just me and him. Me, I see. Would you come with me please? I need to show you something. Karen, why? Me, it's easier to show you than explain. Karen rolls her eyes, gets up from her desk, and motions for Paul to come with. We all go back to the server room. Me, okay, first let me ask. My understanding is you want the backup software installed on the Windows server, right? Karen, of course, so it can perform brick-level backups of the email. You guys said you were sending one of your best. How do you not know about backups? For those who don't know, brick-level backups at that time, not sure what it's called now, meant the software allowed the backup and restore of individual emails, not the entire email database. So, if someone deleted one email and wanted just that one restored, that could happen instead of restoring/overwriting the entire database and losing new emails processed since the last backup. It also saved a lot of time. Me, that's why I'm asking. You bought an add-on module for the Novell server, showing her where it says on the box. I can't install this on Windows. Karen snatches the box from my hand. I called the software company myself and ordered it from them directly after I told them the setup here. Are you saying they lied to me and sold me the wrong product or made a mistake? Me, no, I'm not saying that as I wasn't part of the conversation. I'm only saying this is for Novell, and I can't install this on Windows. Karen, so they sold me the wrong software? Me, can we go to their website or call them? Karen rolls her eyes, fine. Let's go back to my office. Back at her office, she sat down, went to the website while I stood behind her, then spun around to me with a smirk on her face after a few mouse clicks. See? This is what I bought. It says right here it will back up Microsoft Exchange servers. Me, well, this doesn't say brick-level backups. And it says for Novell servers. Can you click where it says Microsoft? Karen sighs and clicks. This is pointless. I bought what I bought because it's half the cost. When I called, they said this would also back up my Exchange server. Why would it back up a Windows server, but not install on a Windows server? That makes no sense. Me, pointing to the screen, it says right there the Windows version performs brick-level backups. The NetWare version will back up the emails, but the entire database. And it will restore the entire database as one file, but it can't do brick-level backups or restores. A server can back up anything as long as it can see it on a network and it has permissions to it. Karen, here's the bottom line. They told me this would work. I'm paying you to make this work, so make it work. Or tell me you can't make it work, and I'll find someone who can. Enter the malicious compliance. Me, it'll work but not like how you think. And if you want to, air quotes, make it work, it will only install on Novell. Can I show you? Karen sighs and hands me the software box. Me, I still need an admin login. After several more minutes of debate over the admin login, she reluctantly logged me into the Windows server. I put the CD into the Windows server, and nothing happened. I brought up the CD in Explorer to show her folders and files, but no executable, and no way really to install. She unlocked the Novell console, I inserted the CD, mounted it, and the install autoran. I didn't look back, but I could feel her eyes burning holes into the back of my head. In about 30 minutes, I installed the software, configured it to back up the Exchange server boxes as well as the rest of the data on both servers, and performed a successful test backup, all while she hovered over me with her arms crossed. I noticed that backups hadn't been running, and after checking the logs to find the problem, I configured the scheduled service to log in with the backup operator account credentials. Tested again successfully. Me, by the way, your backups haven't been running for about 3 months. I fixed that for you. The scheduled service didn't have a login account configured, so I plugged in the backup operator username password. Karen, what do you mean? You saw the status screen when we walked in and it said a successful backup? And you said you needed admin rights? Me, yes, that was the last successful backup, which was months ago. Switching to the log file on screen, here's the date and time of the last successful backup. Configuring a backup job and installing software are 2 different tasks that need 2 different sets of permissions. Karen stomped to the door, opened it, and yelled for Paul. When he arrived, she lit into him so loudly someone from the cubicles came into the room to see what the problem was. I still feel bad about that because it wasn't Paul's fault. After 3 hours, I left and immediately called my boss from the car, explaining exactly what happened. Sure enough, Karen had already called. My boss reassigned my other client and asked me to come back. When I got back to the office, the owner, my boss, and I went to the conference room, and we set up a conference call with Karen and the backup software support team. They looked up Karen's account and politely explained that according to the notes, they told Karen to buy the Windows version for brick-level backups of Exchange email accounts. But Karen balked at the price, so they offered her the Novell version with the caveat that it would perform entire Exchange database backups and user folders only. I wasn't completely right, but right enough. Karen now insisted that they only sold her what they sold her because she threatened to buy their competitor's software. After she demanded a supervisor, the supervisor got on the call and said she needed to buy the correct software. They would make an exception to their no refunds on open software policy, and give her a partial credit. Otherwise, she could go ahead and buy the competitor's software, and she would get no refund at all. Karen huffed and puffed and tried playing the "do you know who I work for" card, but they wouldn't budge. She had no other choice. After the software company hung up, Karen asked the owner when he could send me out to finish the job. He muted the phone and asked me if I wanted to go back out there, and I said no. He asked me if I would go if he sent a senior there with me, and I agreed. He then unmuted and told Karen that to make sure there are no issues, he was sending me with a senior engineer, and he made a deal with her. If the senior corrected my work, there would be no charge for service. However, if I was correct, then she would pay for my time today plus the time for both me and the senior on the second visit. Also, she would need to make sure that we had full administrative access and not hover while we worked. Agree to all conditions or we don't come back. Karen agreed and added in that she would definitely not work with us again, then hung up abruptly. We went back after Karen got the correct software. I installed it without a hitch even though she had enabled remote desktop on the server to watch me. I also wrote up a job aid for Paul with screenshots to manage backup jobs. The senior saw I knew what I was doing, so to pass the time he made a list of recommendations for her: server racks, anti-static mats, UPS, racks for the switches, cable management, adequate ventilation and temperature controls, physically securing the room, disaster recovery plan, etc. He emailed them to Karen and CC'd me, my boss, and the owner. The invoice we sent her charged her for 3 hours for my first visit, plus the hour at my rate, and another hour for the senior at the higher rate. A few months later, my boss told me they got a call back from the team's new CIO. He said after the team restructured the business unit, he took Karen's place and hired additional staff. Paul discovered the recommendation list among a bunch of emails Karen had deleted with a brick-level restore of her emails that I set up. The new CIO wanted to know how soon the company could send someone to complete the recommendation list and consult his staff on additional recommendations. Since the new CIO was hiring his own staff, he wouldn't need us for a long-term support contract, but he would definitely call us when he needed any work done they couldn't handle. Trim the hedges. Growing up was very interesting as my parents were divorced, and I had ADHD, or whatever they're calling it this week. Not so much hyper, but definitely the ADD, and that led to a lot of malicious compliance on my part. Here's one. As a teenager, my parents were divorced, and money was an issue. So no allowance to do the things teenagers like to do. This also meant no car, no insurance. You get the idea. I watched some friends work minimum wage jobs and hated that idea. So instead, I found a lawnmower and started mowing lawns. I lived in a middle-class neighborhood, so 5 to 6 lawns, $20 a pop, a weekend would give you some nice spending cash in the 90s. One customer a few streets away asked me to trim his hedges for him. I didn't know how or have the tools, but he did. He showed me what he expected, and I made it happen. They looked great. He was so happy he gave me $100. In today's money, that would be about $250. When I got home, I excited told my mom what happened. My mom, as wonderful as she was, misunderstood life in general. In her mind, if you fixed a car issue, suddenly you were the car expert and knew everything about cars. Same thing with cooking, computers, audio, video, and yard work. She proceeded to tell me to do the same for the bushes in front of our house. I tried to tell her I didn't have the tools and was only following his instructions. They weren't hedges. But she was adamant I do it. To the point she starts screaming at me. What would any 16-year-old teenager do? Go grab our replica samurai sword, sharp as all, and start to hack away at the bushes in front of our house. Now my neighbors knew my mom had unrealistic expectations from previous events, but even this was odd. One of our neighbors came over asking me in a heavy southern accent. "Neighbor, what in the hell are you doing?" Me, cut someone's hedges, and mom suddenly thinks I know how to trim bushes. Neighbor, that again. You, want to borrow some powered clippers? Me, nope. I'm steaming mad at the moment. Mom, hearing the neighbor, comes out and sees her bushes partially mangled. Mom, what the hell are you doing? Me, trimming the bushes as I proceeded to whack a few more. Mom, I meant how you're supposed to. Me, sure, whack with what tools? Whack, I'm a genius, right? Whack, I trim someone's hedges, whack, so I must be able to magically trim bushes, whack. Mom looks befuddled as I continue to hack away using a replica samurai sword. Neighbor steps in, patting me on the back, and says I think she got the message, as I turn to look at her with a shocked / befuddled look on her face. I took my shirt and cleaned the now dented blade and walked inside to go take a shower. I'd love to say this kind of behavior stopped, but it never did. She also never asked me to trim the bushes again. Can't leave before the end of my notice period? No problem. Last month, my manager drops a bombshell. The company has decided to scrap the big project that my team been working on for the past 2 years. We must wrap up everything and, starting from June, we will all be moved to different teams. Now, I'm a data analyst, and the company doesn't have any open projects that require a data analyst. So they looked at my profile, so I had some basic knowledge of programming, and decided to move me to the dev team. Both me and the dev team think it's an insane idea, because I will need lots of training before I become useful, and I don't even want to be a full-time dev, but upper management hasn't bothered to ask for our opinion before making all the arrangements. I immediately start looking for a new job, and as luck would have it there is an extremely high request for data analysts in my area. Within a few weeks I have an offer in hand and I give my notice. My contract, I'm in the EU, is very strict regarding notice periods. A resigning employee must give 2 months' notice. This is entirely for the benefit of the company that will need to find a replacement. The same applies when a company fires an employee, they must give the employee 2 months' notice. However, it's possible to shorten the notice period by mutual agreement, so when I sit down with my manager and HR I tell them I'd like to give only 2 weeks' notice and leave at the end of May. I tell them that I've already started wrapping up my activities before my move to the dev team, and I don't have any ongoing projects that I need to transfer to my colleagues, so 2 weeks would be more than enough to finish documenting everything. They say absolutely no, I have to stay here for the entire 2 months period. Which is fine by me. My new job doesn't start until August, and I don't mind being paid in the meantime. The only reason I suggested shortening the notice period was because I thought I was doing the company a favor. I thought I'd be stealing their paycheck if I stayed for 2 months even though I don't have anything left to do. But since they pretty much told me I was being unprofessional, or that I was trying to cut and run. Okay, I'll take their money in exchange for sitting around doing nothing for a few more weeks. You may think, but Renticle, they're going to find some boring task for you. Well, they can certainly try, but the projects they're working on are so different from what I do that I'm pretty much useless to them. For example, someone will ask, can you do XYZ? And I will honestly answer I've no idea what a XYZ even is, but I will be happy to help if you teach me. At that point, they'll say it would take too long, and it's not worth it to train me since I'm leaving soon. So, my working days now go like this. I show up at 9 a.m. sharp and go to my office, where I'm the only person since the others were moved to different teams. I have a leisurely second breakfast, check my email, then I send a message to our team's group letting them know that I'm free and to ask me if they need help with anything. Then I remote into my home PC and play until lunchtime. I have lunch, coffee, I chat with my coworkers, they're quite nice. It's too bad that upper management is crazy, I'm going to miss them. In the afternoon I usually check Reddit, I chat with my friends if they're online, play a bit more, and I'm out of the door at 5 p.m. By the way, they would like for me to vacate the office, so they can use it as a meeting room, but they can't until I leave. There are no empty desks anywhere, the dev team already hired someone else, and has no space, so tough luck. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.